Life is about choices.
あら、どうなんでしょうか。
wow!
We all have the right to make a decision. Now, as a therapist, I'm looking at what happened between Will Smith and Chris Rock. And as a casual observer, I was able to see, like most people, Will Smith being at the wrong, regardless of what Chris Rock said.
Wow! Will Smith just smacked the shit out of me.
Whether he knew Jada had a medical condition or not, we all saw how Will reacted and thought, wow, he was out of line. Most of us then would think, well, did we know? I had no idea Jada had a medical condition. What makes me think Chris Rock did? And would he be that wicked that he would know and say something like that? But regardless of the details, we focus on Will Smith's actions. The fact that he got up of his seat, went on stage, slapped Chris Rock, sat down, and started to swear and yell from his seat.
My wife's name out your fucking mouth.
Wow, dude.
Yeah.
It was a G.I. Jane joke.
Keep my wife's
G.I. Jane のジョークだったん
out
で
your
す。
fucking mouth.
I'm going to, okay?
Now, as somebody who has been assaulted before,
Okay. That was a greatest night in the history of television.
テレビ史上最高の場
I knew for the next 24 hours, I was in shock over what happened because it was like, it just came out of nowhere. The school says, look, do you want to press charges? Should we get the police involved? And right then and there, I said no. Because as I said, I was still processing it. So it's quite easy to say no, let's just push it aside. And it does take time to process it. I can understand from a point where Chris Rock was at that moment in time says, don't get the police involved, don't press charges. I just want to get this and over with. And from the point of view where he's on stage and he doesn't want to talk about it because he's still trying to understand what has happened.
I don't have like a bunch of shit about what happened. So if you came to hear that, I had like a whole show I wrote before this weekend. And I'm still kind of processing what happened.
And then on the other side, I want to talk about Will Smith and think, in the aftermath of this happening, a lot of people were saying, well, Will was at right, and no one should talk about his wife there. But I think as everyone has had time to reflect and digest, we're like, he kind of overstepped his mark. And I, as a therapist, want to look at Will Smith and think, what would possess him on the biggest night of his life, where he was going to be honored? He knew everyone says, look, you're going to win this stuff. He knows he just has less than 10 minutes to get on that stage and receive his award. And he just snaps and does not think about the consequences, not just getting up to slap Chris, but then he sits down and was yelling at him. He just couldn't hold it. And you start to think, what must have been happening for him to forget about consequences of his actions? He completely would have forgotten about it. Because most of us have been in situations where we are faced with a situation where we want to say our peace of mind or do something, but we think about the consequences. If I go to a gas station, fill my tank with gas, and think, man, I'm struggling for money, I'll just drive off. There are consequences. I've stolen petrol and the police will be after me. If I go to a restaurant, have a nice meal, and the bill comes like, man, it's more than I thought. Well, I won't pay, I'll just run away. There are consequences for that. So most of us might have our thoughts thinking, in one way, but our behavior would be, we restrain ourselves, or man, I'll talk to him afterwards, or stuff like that. We think, we process, and think about the bigger picture. for Will Smith to not be able to do so. Even his mother said that's uncharacteristic of Will.
The famous actor, born and raised in West Philadelphia, who always seemed to be cool and collected, lost it. Even Will's mother admits she was surprised.
He is a very even people person, and that's the first time I've ever seen him go off. The first time in his lifetime.
That says, man, he must have been going through stuff that he just couldn't think clearly. So I think it's important, as much as we understand it, he did the wrong thing. He should have controlled himself. He's at fault. But I think it's important to understand what's going on with him, because most of us, hardly any of us, will ever put ourselves in such a situation. Even, I know as a therapist working for the government, I know that personal views I may have about things in society, but if I make it even on my social media, on my Facebook or anywhere, and somebody sees it and puts a complaint, there are consequences for all our actions. And so for anyone to just snap like that, like he did, tells me that there's something deep going on with him that hasn't been addressed, and that he just couldn't control it. And so I just hope that over this time where he is taking time away, that he may reflect on his life. He may reflect on what pushed him over the edge. Not going into any personal stuff about himself and his wife and his family, but it would time for him and his family to reflect on what happened at that moment in time that pushed him over the edge. So there's a lot of love and support for Chris Rock, because as I said, he's going through his own trauma.
Yeah, it's weird. I've always been able to tell jokes about it, but yeah, now in therapy, I'm allowed to, experience it as trauma.
Yeah,
you can say,
and not feel like a bitch. Feel like
like a bitch, and yeah,
and like I should. That's a fine thing to acknowledge that happened.
It's a fine thing to acknowledge, and it's also, the thing about trauma is when you experience trauma, it's not that you. It's basically whenever you think about it like it's happening for the first time.
Yeah, your body doesn't know when. It doesn't know if it's present, past, or future.
Right. So yeah, therapy's allowed me to put it in the past
and trying to process what's going on. But as I said, there's a lot of patience and understanding in Will Smith that, he probably has something deep that he hasn't resolved, that just triggered, because to do what he did and then go and party as if nothing had happened. Says that it was an out-of-body experience, and he needs to be able to get support and help around that. And so I think for him, awards and fame and accolades would all be secondary compared to what's deeper happening with him. So hope you enjoy this long talk and stuff, and hope you understand the importance to get help, therapy, get people to talk to, not people who are going to say yes, 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 but people who are going to be able to question everything you're thinking and your behaviors and thoughts. Take care.